Good evening, good evening. Coming to you live here in the studio of IntellectualRadio.com. My name is Gregory Singh with Minister Michael Muhammad from the New Black Leadership. And we are so thankful and honored to be back here live with you tonight, live on Facebook, also live on IntellectualRadio.com. Let me give you the phone number because I'm sure some of you all are going to want to jump in and give your say on this particular topic. We're going to bounce it around, but 708-223-8953. 708-223-8953. I am absolutely honored, as I just said, to be back over these precious airwaves. And I don't take it light, but I do say this, and I want you all to hear this. I have no equal on the radio, no equal at all. And I say that lightly. Now, Minister Michael, my friend and my brother, sitting here with him, you know how you feel. You ain't worried about nobody. I'm willing to fight with anybody when you got somebody like this on your side. And I want to say this before Minister Mike speak. I want to thank my friends from Drake University. Had a great time with you all in Maryland, Washington, D.C., for the Drake BOS reunion. Man, some of the greatest people that I've ever met, and I know and love dearly. Had a great time. Thank you. And I want to thank my friends from the Robert Teller homes. We had a great reunion over near DuSable a week or so before the reunion with the Drake folks. So it's always good to connect back with your people. So I'm hitting that chord, so it must be the chord that I'm hitting. So anyway, just wanted to put that out there, and I'm thankful to all of you all that are tuning in live. Call somebody and tell them that we're on the air live, and I promise you, there is no telling, ain't no telling what's gonna come out of my mouth tonight. Minister Mike, how you feel, my brother?
Oh, blessed by the Creator to still be on above ground, to be seen and to be heard, and just want to give all praise to the Creator for his many wonderful blessings we don't see, blessings we don't expect, for his mercy, because none of us are worthy of him. So we have to be thankful that he still bestows upon us his spirit and his mission, and
that's right,
and some of his direction and his guidance on our life. Otherwise, we would be like so many other people who are lost in darkness and living a total savage, unconscious life. We have to thank the Creator that to a measure we have been blessed to be lifted above a lot of what other people suffer from. Absolutely. Spiritually and mentally and consciously. So it's just a blessing, and I want to thank you, my brother, for having the vision to host this show on behalf of the New Black Leadership Coalition, so that we can begin to consistently put out our message or representation of our message, because as you know, we have many other great brothers and sisters who are part of our coalition who have their own way of representing themselves. And so we really hope to get more of them on the show.
That's right.
Between now and the end of the year, so that our viewers and listeners can hear these brothers, even though they're being heard, in other places and other spaces. So I thank you, brother, and so it's a great privilege and honor to be here on the radio with you. And even though I went to school with my brother Matt McGill in the mornings, I can bear witness that you are head and shoulders above my brother Matt McGill. You're head and shoulders above anybody on that station, because your level of integrity and sincerity and commitment to Black people, as well as what has been poured in you from our mentor, our mutual mentor, is head and shoulders above anything that they have received. And so, we just have to thank Almighty God for this opportunity
Oh,
to be
absolutely.
heard.
And I am so glad. And folks, let me tell you something. What you just said, Minister Michael, is real talk. And when you have the love, you got the light. And so I don't have to make this up. I don't need a script.
Mhm.
I don't need to rehearse. I speak directly from my heart
Mhm.
that I'm guided by a spirit. I'm guided by instructions. I'm guided by that energy, that energy that guided Fred Hampton,
Mhm.
that guided Denmark Vesey, that guided Gabriel Prosser, that guided Frederick Douglass, that guided Marcus Garvey, Malcolm, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, that guided so many, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth. I mean, folks that took a stand. Now, this does not mean you're alienating anyone else, that you are teaching, promoting hate, etc. No, the only way things are going to get better is that we have a really heart to heart conversation. We bring in a perspective that tends to be cast to the side, where unfortunately, on stations that supposed to be black radio stations, you hear garbage, and they don't have to go that route. And I mean, they'll still get probably more listeners. So I don't really understand why. I listened to some of the foolishness that was being discussed, and I want to say, uh, I'm bowing down and saying, "Hey, you, my main man, Kaepernick, keep up the good work," and all of those that have joined you in that movement. I just happened to be flipping the television, and silly Billy O'Reilly gave me some talking points. Silly Billy O'Reilly gave me some talking points from Fox News.
Mhm.
I was watching that clown, and he had a guest or two on, and it was all about making this brother look as though he is evil, he a bad person, and this is not the way you should express your issues. And and so many people did this and did that with the flag. You stupid.
Mhm.
You are stupid. Here you are living wherever you live, and being wherever you are every day. You don't care about the suffering of the poor. You don't care about the suffering of black folks. You don't really lay it out on the line and try to come to the aid of those that are really out here struggling. And you don't bring your flag with you. So stop that. I mean, it's so hypocritical to hear people talk about Kaepernick like he have actually done some stuff that's really bad. And now the man got a movement.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a movement from and you said it earlier, the media silly butt.
Mhm.
Their intentions was to try to destroy the man. And they still gonna try, because some of them are so bent on people taking a stand. And you do whatever you do, and then you say, well, that happened. You cannot relegate, that pain to the people today. That happened 250 years ago, or that happened 300 years ago, or so what? Look at the condition of our people. So that tells you how bad it was for us, that it's taken this long to fix what was broke and what's still broke.
Well,
You know what I mean?
after,
I'm a fan of the brother.
yeah, well, I mean, this is the logic of the devil, because the devil always wants to make you believe that you're in heaven when you're actually in hell. The devil always wants to deceive you. And so the devil makes you think that which is up is down, that which is down is up. And so Bill O'Reilly and those kind of beings, they are ignoring every modern report, account, and study of modern police departments in 2016 and the overwhelming disparity in blacks being shot and killed, blacks mysteriously dying after arrests, blacks being harassed through everything from stop and frisk all the way up down the line to being murdered in the hands of so-called law enforcement. Members of the so-called media, especially on Fox, and not just Fox, but throughout the spectrum, white men who have this sense of white male superiority, but in fact, most of them are totally uninformed and ignorant to the reality of life in America, not only for black people and poor black people, but the truth is, Brother Greg, I don't think that men like Hannity and O'Reilly and Limbaugh and the like, men like that, I don't see where they have any care for their own people. They don't have any concern for the poor whites in America who are really suffering in America. If you are not connected, if your family is not connected, if you're not connected, if you're from an ethnic group that is not favored where you live, then you're out of luck even as a white person. And so you don't see these wealthy white men on television even expressing a concern for poor white people. And this is what black people have to realize, is that we have to get rid of this false hope that somehow whites are going to embrace this irrational ideal of a colorblind society or this benevolent society full of love, that now whites will wake up and realize that they should help black people for all of our suffering. No, that's irrational, because wealthy white men don't want to help poor white people. So why would they now want to help any black people? This is just irrational. We have to look at it objectively. And if you go through the thousands of hours of tape of any one of these prominent TV and personalities and so forth, I defy you to find 30 minutes where they talked about poor whites and put forth advocacy for poor whites and how to turn America around to better educate and better uplift poor white people.
Yeah, make America great.
Right. So most of Donald Trump's appeal is to undereducated, miseducated, disenfranchised whites who can look themselves and see that America should give them an advantage, but they have not been able to access the advantage. And so they're frustrated and angry, and out of their ignorance and out of their inclination to be racist, they blame blacks and Hispanics and Native Americans and others because they haven't been made able to think critically about how their own people have destroyed their opportunities in America. So we cannot expect these people to speak for us or understand a man like Kaepernick or any other prominent athlete or spokesperson for the hurt of black people, because they don't even understand the hurt of their own people.
And it's so silly. I mean, not embarrassing. It's just sickening to hear them act as though they really don't get it, because I know they get it, but they've been paid to continue to keep the confusion. And what they do is, it's like the status quo is the status quo. And if a few people actually are able to make it through that, that's okay. A few athletes here and there and few entertainers here and there, and then they let a few people in financially. But the masses, as you just stated so eloquently, the masses of the people, be it white or black, poor people in general, are suffering under the capitalistic approach or structure.
That's right.
That whole structure is based on the king of the mountains. And there's no way for, a matter of fact, if in fact Kaepernick came up with a solution, and he said, I tell you what a good solution would be: make education free. Make education free for everybody that's in college, want to go to college. Why you got to pay? See, if that's the hallmark of the country, then why the teachers got to fight for a raise? Why is there even a discussion about money when it comes to education, period? And I'm not even talking about the city politics. I'm talking about the vision of the country. See, and let's go there, but yet you find these silly clowns. But then you go back to, I was watching a few months ago, The Godfather. And when I was watching that movie, and I was just having a conversation briefly to someone about The Godfather, and I was telling them all of the lessons in The Godfather that is powerful about family, about loyalty, about, the special interest groups, and everything in that movie is so real that you could see it still happening today. The hotheads in the family, the ones who speak out of term, letting folks know how they feel and think, Mr. Sonny. Right. So I was telling them, when you look at the structure and you see that, I was watching one of the football games. I just happened to see the beginning of the game. I don't even know who was playing. And one of the Bushes was there, him and his wife, and they made this big patriotic. I saw people crying on the sideline. The flag was the size of the football field, and it was emotional. And I said, that is some wicked manipulation on the pain and suffering of the people. Yet, after all of that ceremonial stuff goes away, you ain't crying when you ride through Roseland. Hell, if you ain't crying when you ride through Inglewood, if you ain't crying when you go through Compton, if you ain't crying when you go through Watts, then your damn crying is phony. Your crying is phony, and you pick and choose what it is you want to be sad about. That's why I'm telling you all, you can keep being entertained by that stupid stuff that you hear coming from Steve or Tom Joyner or even VON. I love Cliff. I don't have a problem with Perry or with Matt McGill, but it's time for our people to get substance. It's time for our people to stop going along to get along. We don't owe anybody anything, and the only way we're going to make America great again, since they like to use that term, let's make America great again. You can't make it great again. And matter of fact, great ain't synonymous with good. It could be the Great Depression, the Great Babylon. That's right. The great wicked Alexander the Great. It wasn't nothing great in terms of good. But anyway, let's make America great again. Minister Mike, I would love to make America great. And the only way you can make America great again is that you look out for the downtrodden, that you look out for those that are suffering, and you come up with a way where you redistribute the wealth. And that's your conversation. Every time you get on the air, every time you part of a meeting, you have to say, how does this policy, how does this plan benefit those that are hungry, those that are suffering, those that don't have food on their table, those that don't have a job? How does it benefit? If it don't benefit the poor, then what you're doing is blowing smoke.
Yeah,
That's me.
Well, this is the idea behind the New Black Leadership Coalition, because everything evolves out of the quality of leadership that is in front of the people.
That's right.
Wherever the people are found. And so America is holding on to some ideals that were birthed in the Constitution. Many of those ideals are very high ideals rooted in very supreme principles. But the contradiction is that the system that was in place and some of the men who put that system in place, known as slavery, which is what drove, or capitalism drove slavery, which is what you're speaking about, capitalism. There was a deep hypocrisy that is in the very composition and nature of what America represents. And the battle between light and darkness, truth and falsehood, freedom and slavery is the ongoing spiritual struggle and battle that both black, brown, red, yellow, and white in America are engaged in. Primarily black and white are engaged in America. And it is one of the four great impediments to our self-development as a community, as a family, as a human being, as a nation.
That's right.
As governments. One of those four great impediments to our development is called nationalism, or i.e. tribalism. And so this sense of nationalism, tribalism, it is tearing us apart. It is not just affecting whites, it's also affecting black people, because black people, many of us, labor under the presumption that white people actually represent the highest level of intelligence that's available to the human family. And so if white people wave a flag, if white people sing the Star-Spangled Banner, if white people pledge allegiance to the flag, if white people set up businesses that extract 90% of the wealth while paying the workers 10% of what's left over, then we go out into the world and we mimic the value system, the thinking, the behavior of whites. And so when we see men like Colin Kaepernick and they speak up, or we hear a man like Minister Farrakhan speak out and others, then it goes against the grain of our sense of arrival and comfortability, because we don't understand why they have a problem with America. But they're not the problem. We're the problem, because we've bought into the thing that is this thing called nationalism that has some deeper roots in a mind that has been stunted in its development. And so we're very childish in America, where we will cry over the flag, but as you said, white men, wealthy white men won't go to West Virginia in the Appalachian Mountains. They won't go up to Detroit where they're poor whites. They won't go to East Chicago or out by Gary, Indiana, or anywhere where there are poor white people who are tremendously suffering in America. They don't have tears for them. They have no compassion for their own people, because they really believe in the dollar and the power and prestige that this manufactured fiat money has generated for them, above and beyond the principles of Almighty God that lift up a nation. And so the Bible, and I try not to be too biblical or scriptural on this show, but the Bible, metaphorically speaking, prophetically speaking of America, says your kingdom has been weighed in the balance and is found wanting. Well, America's not wanting for wealth. She's not wanting for power, military power. She's not wanting for all of the things that make a nation dominate other nations. What America is wanting of is a submission to the will of God and setting up a society that properly cultivates people to love themselves for who they are and to put God above personality, God above government, God above all of these money, God above all of these artificial things that we create as a byproduct of whatever system we imagine in our minds that take us away from God's system. We don't have that kind of world.
Absolutely.
You see, so most white people, if you understand the psychological profile, the emotional profile of 95% of whites, you're looking at a group of people who are psychologically, spiritually, and emotionally uncultivated and undeveloped. Their behavior, if you put up a chart of the behavior of adolescents and teenagers and transpose the behavior of most white men in government and positions of power with wealth, and you put up a matrix of those two behavior patterns, you will see that those two behavior patterns overlap. If you look at the reactions of teenagers and juveniles who don't get their way, who can't make people give them what they want, and you compare that to the psychological and emotional profile of most of those in elected office and corporate heads in America, and even most of the spiritual leaders in America, you'll see that their behavior is at the same level of juvenile. Because they're emotionally, mentally, and spiritually uncultivated, because they've been under the yoke of white men of supreme wisdom who know how to engineer society to keep society controlled and partitioned off in a way that they can extract all the power and wealth for themselves.
Whoa.
We live under a manufactured, extremely socially engineered society, and all of us fall somewhere along the spectrum of that social engineering until we're introduced to a greater truth through men like Paul Robeson, men like Frederick Douglass, men like Nat Turner, men like Denmark Vesey, men like Marcus Garvey, Elijah Muhammad, Louis Farrakhan, Malcolm X, Kwame Ture, until these men are able to reach our minds, Chancellor Williams, Sheikh Anta Diop, until these men who were ordained by the Creator with a piece of truth that would break the shackles of our mind, until we submerge ourselves in that knowledge, we follow this social engineering box. We're stuck in the social engineering box. So all we see is our degree, all we see is our job, all we see is our credit score, all we see is the superficial stuff about the world, and we detach ourselves from 500 years of mass murder, genocide, suffering, and oppression by people who look like us.
Wow. Man, you have absolutely, we could call it the night. And we can call it the night, because what I heard, and our folks, you should call in if you really want to add to this. And I know it is not difficult, but it's a struggle sometimes. And then some people, you're taking notes. But if you just happen to want to give a comment or have a question, 708-223-8953. 708-223-8953.
And if I could, I know you got it, but I want to make this point just in follow up to this. And we are the New Black Leadership Coalition, and so we venerate all of our great leaders. But being a student of Minister Farrakhan, I want those of you who are listening to us to think about this in the context of everything that I just said. When you see Colin Kaepernick, when you see Jesse Williams, when you see most, not all, but better than 90% of all of our celebrities who speak up, and make a demonstration against our oppression, what most black people don't realize is that these black people are in the sanctuary of their home and their car and their privacy. The number one person that opens their mind in modern times is that man, Minister Farrakhan. And so this is why Minister Farrakhan, and it's an open secret that the enemy has tried to kill that man, because they never wanted his ideals to take root across the broad spectrum of black life the way it has done today. And so they poisoned Minister Farrakhan, and he survived the poison. Then they come back and they poison him again in treating him for prostate cancer by over radiating him and really just trying to burn him alive. But there's a force with Minister Farrakhan that is keeping him in our midst for our benefit, right? And this is not about personality worship. This is just trying to give credit where credit is due, and to appeal to those of you who are watching and listening to understand that Almighty God has never left us alone. He has always left somebody that he has his hand on very heavily to give us that truth that would wake us up and break us out of the socially engineered sleep and stupor and brain false programming that allows our enemy to have us in love with his system to our own detriment. That's why here in Chicago, you are wrestling with yourself now, no matter how much you know Rahm Emanuel is bad for Chicago, bad for Black Chicago. Many of you, even though you don't like it, some of you are outright angry at Rahm, but you still in your heart somewhere you wrestling with the idea of not voting for this Rahm Emanuel, because you have been so affected by the programming of the oppressor that you don't feel right going against Rahm Emanuel because they've connected him to our brother Barack Obama. And you don't understand why you're wrestling in your spirit when you know you should not even be considering voting him back in the office again. Many of you who voted for him the first time, the second, you really, in spite of all of the overtaxation, the pilfering of the city tax dollar, all of the cronyism, all of the police brutality, all of the racist things that have just been totally inflamed in his administration, many of you are wrestling with whether or not you're going to vote for him or not, when it shouldn't even be a question, because you have been deeply programmed and engineered in your thinking to love your enemy. And so what I'm saying is that Colin Kaepernick is a child, an indirect benefactor of the truth that a man like Louis Farrakhan has been shouting in the wilderness against the grain and against a wind that's blowing back at him from the oppressor and many of the ignorant of our people. Now, if you stop and look, you'll see why the Creator has preserved a man like Louis Farrakhan, because the Creator is trying to show the rest of us that if we grow up, if we embrace the truth that man represents, we will find the intelligence and the courage to be uncompromising about our situation and our condition. And finally, that's why I have a problem with black radio. That's why I mentioned my brother earlier, because he makes me want to vomit, because no matter what the issue is, no matter how many politicians and leaders he puts on the show, he lets them off the hook. And even now, my brother Cliff Kelly, who I love, he compromised. They don't pin anybody to the mat on VON to make them, they let them tell all kind of trivial responses to critical life issues. They don't pin them to the carpet on the air. They're more interested in being friends with them so they'll come back on the show, versus taking a stand in the vein of Vernon Jarrett, in the vein of Lou Palmer, in the vein of these of these strong black journalists who were unafraid. They were intelligent, but they had courage. And that's what we're missing today, Brother Gregory, is we don't have people on the air that don't care, that are not afraid to stand on the truth all the way down the line. We're too compromised.
Yeah, and the thing is, and let me say happy anniversary to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Oh, that's right.
63 years of marriage, him and Sister Khadija.
That's big.
Farrakhan, that's absolutely 63 years of marriage. And for all of those who are still in your marriage, whether it's 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, or 5 years, or 3, congratulations, and keep up the good work. And realize that it is absolutely an ongoing struggle. And that friendship that him and Sister Khadija have is so awesome. And to see that brother still shining. And if God is not with him, then we all in trouble. We are all in grave trouble. And see, the real trick is, do you really pain? Do you really hurt when you see obvious conditions of the people? I mean, in every facet, on every level, you see things not right. You know, we're discussing every time you look and listen to any talk show, and particularly VON, it starts off, and not totally jamming you, VON, but you're sitting in the seats of some powerful individuals that set up the station to be the voice for the people. And that's why you're being checked so hard, because you are wasting precious airwaves with trivial, and I'm gonna call it trivialism. You're wasting the precious airwaves with, and it's challenging people is one thing, but having the information to correct them is another thing. Right. So you can't challenge the people if you are unlearned and you are not studying. You should not be on every day for 3 or 2 or 4 hours. And you mean to tell me there's not a movement from your voice? From what you know, even if you came on every day and you were motivating and inspiring people to clean up their neighborhoods. Every day you came on, your thing was pick up the paper, clean up, pick up the bottles, or look out your window and make sure that the children or the elderly or anyone is safe, making sure that you come out of your doors and you wave and you let the people know that you there. And when you hear some foolishness, you come out and you take sides on truth and right. But if you behind the scene, and when you do come on the air, I mean, yeah, I know you got to have commercials and you got to do all of that stuff. But so far, there's no advancements. There's no progress for the people. And I don't hear you saying, I got to give, even though it's an interesting, it is not altogether silly, but I think because of how Donald Trump makes that statement, what we hear is something different when he said, let's make America great again. Make America great again. So how did it look when it was great before? Because I can do the math. and I know the conditions of the people. So you stupid, sir, to even make that statement. Because to make it great again, are you telling me that there was a time, once upon a time, when black folks was treated with freedom, justice, and equality? What great America have you ever lived in that this was taking place? So what I'm saying is that you cannot offer solutions, you cannot fix problems if you sugarcoat what the reality is of the challenges, the issues, the foolishness, the lies. And if you don't want to challenge the lies, then you have trivial conversations where, as you said, Michael, that people come on the air. And I mean, for instance, I wanted to send Matt. I wish Matt, and I got to say this to you, brother. Somebody let Matt McGill. I know some people watching this, and you know Matt. And Matt is a friend of mine on Facebook, and I consider Matt a friend, period. We know Matt. Mm-hmm. He's my brother. I actually love him. Mm-hmm. Love him. So, but Matt, so don't you turn. And even if you got your smart telephone, wherever you might be tonight, hopefully you're getting some rest. But Matt, you had Governor Rauner on your show. Guess how you should have started out that show, Matt? Because I sure would have. This is what you supposed to have said to Governor. Governor Rauner, thank you for agreeing to come on the show, sir. Really appreciate it. And I think you know that 98.5% of our audience, they don't like you. Mm-hmm. You do know that, Governor Ryan. Mm-hmm. And do you know that most of what you have cut in your budget, you know how that affects poor people, poor whites, poor people in general? You do know that, right, Governor? Governor, I'm talking to you. Mm-hmm. There's nothing that you have come up with that will take people out of poverty, because the formula that is used, credit, ratings, how people get loans, how people qualify for a loan, how people can get a car, a home, can pay college tuition, how people can get groceries on their table. You know what it requires, right, Governor? What policy have you promoted? You can't promote that. So what you do is you make this thing seem like it's a fight between you and the Democrats, you and Michael Madigan, you and Cullerton, or you and the mayor, or you and other legislators downstate. But the real thing is that's all distraction, because you went and you found two guys, Mr. Brooks and Mr. Meeks. We have not heard from neither one of them. Matter of fact, they have now passed the Meeks on a milk carton. You know, when people are missing, mm-hmm. they have him on a milk carton and say, have you seen this man? And I'm saying that jokingly, but really seriously. I want to just go back real quick, Minister Mike, back to something you said. See, for me, the illusions is what we have bought into, folks. And even while you are viewing a show like this, you really think it's Minister Mike against the mayor. Rahm Emanuel is not the only mayor that's been the mayor of Chicago. Mm-hmm. You had Mayor Daley. And you had before him, you had James Byrne, and you had Belandic, right?
And the first mayor.
And then first mayor. And then we had our brother, beloved Harold Washington. And you had some other players. So the picture is really, really big. But I don't fault Rahm Emanuel, because he came in with a vision and a plan. And Barack, as you say, have worked with him. I fault us that won't have honest conversations with the mayor or the governor or whoever to say what's in it for poor people. Whatever policy that they put forth, you got to fight, and you got to convince that other side that that's not right. That's not going to work. That is not in the best interest of the people, of the poor, because it's people who sit in these seats, and they have to be, they say they have a constituent, well, then what is your constituent saying? Your constituents, well, they don't vote. So just because they don't vote, that means you're not going to represent their pain, their suffering?
Well, that's a great point, because we're talking about new Black leadership.
Right.
And Rahm is not our real problem. See, white people have a plan, whether it's the Chicago plan or other elaborate schemes that they have spent the time to come up with a direction into the future. So when that person comes into office, they have a game book to go by. But that game book cannot play out without the complicity of some Black people. And the problem we have as Black people is that Chance the Rapper has more courage than all, except maybe one or two, all of our Black elected officials. And why do I say Chance the Rapper? Because Chance the Rapper understood that, hell, I have built a constituency. And since I have a constituency, I don't need to acquiesce to white people at a major label. I'm going to keep my own constituency so I can keep my message and my music true to what I believe in. And the problem with Black elected officials is that you're lazy. You're ignorant about how the power game works. Sure, you know how to register to vote. You know how to count ballots. You know how to read a poll sheet. You know how to go in, vote, build, and do all of these kind of technical things, but you still don't get the big picture. In your heart, you're not playing a power game. You're trying to get a job. In your heart, you're not trying to leverage the constituency of poor Black people who come out and vote for you to gain power and elevate your own independence, elevate the quality of life of the poorest of your people. You're just happy to have a job with all the perks and fringe benefits associated with that job. And so you let the Democratic machine, whatever's left of it, you allow it to buy a constituency for you. And so because they put up money to help you run a campaign, because your heart is full of fear and you know nothing about the history of your own people and how we have been decimated by whites in America since we came here, you have no real connection to that. So even though you have a constituency that you can bypass the machine and make them loyal to you when you stand up for them, you're afraid to do that. So every election season, you go bent over, hat in hand, with your tail tucked to Mr. Emanuel or Mr. Burke or Mr. Madigan or Mr. Cullerton, or some of you go to Ronna, or some of you go to all of these so-called party bosses, because you don't have the courage to build your own independent constituency into a real viable organization that will fight to reduce the inordinate taxation that Black people and poor people in Chicago are being taxed out of this city, and our elected officials are saying nothing. He's decimating everything that's critical to black life, and we don't ever hear our black elected officials angry or upset in any kind of way about what's going on in City Hall.
And you're not. So the plan is the new black leaders.
That's right.
Is to, and you know, when you mentioned the Bible, the Quran, and when you look at the scriptures, the goal and the objective was to raise up the people so that the people could see they couldn't see the forest for the trees. Mm-hmm. And so our people have to stop looking at elected officials as the way out, mm-hmm. because it's not the way out. Mm-hmm. And I think the elected officials, if I might humbly say, I think they feel like I didn't sign up to be a savior.
Right.
I'm not a liberator.
That's right.
And so the big mistake that we are making as a people is that we have to be careful that we see that as how things are not getting done. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to get done that way. Mm-hmm. So how do we, and then there's one thing about folks saying, well, we need to replace all of them. And with who? Mm-hmm. Because most of them that will get it, they'll forget how they got it, mm-hmm. when they get it. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying that because the fire, and the fire from you, Minister Mike, is fire. Mm-hmm. But the fire in the people to be strong enough to motivate and inspire the community, us individually, to where if they heard Enoch speak from the new black leadership, if they heard Professor Lance Williams, that great brother, if they heard Sister Kimberly Kim Delaney Harris, if they heard Johnny Muhammad, if they heard Joe Watkins, if they heard Bamani Obadelli, Brother Cyron,
Chairman Fred Hampton Jr.
And why I'm saying, and many more. The Sax preacher, my brother. Mm-hmm. So if they heard them, they would again hear the same thing where people are frustrated. So what is missing? Just like we've heard the voice of the Honorable Minister Farrakhan making all the sense in the world. But the people who claim to be with him, or the people who claim to be with Dr. King and claim to be with Marcus Garvey, why did they stop? What you know, so I do understand the hidden hand stuff and under forces, etc. But the other energy and negative forces among us as a people, the envy and jealousy and disunity, where we won't pool our resources. We won't, I'm telling you, when you came up, and it just when you alone, but the idea was birthed in a movement that you started way before it was called a New Black Leadership, when you brought a bunch of individuals to the table to meet when you all were dealing with trying to curtail the gang stuff, so-called structure. Y'all, it was unbelievable. But I know for a fact that the whole premise and objective behind this piece is to bring light, is to motivate, inspire us to realize that we got to start listening to voices, folks, and then move on what we hear. Everybody have to organize in their community. Every individual, we cannot wait and on anybody. Politicians cannot help us out of this misery. Matter of fact, the pastor can't help us out of this misery. You know, only God can help us, but through the truth. And the truth is, we gotta help ourselves, man.
That's right.
Cause while we waiting on a government to fix what they have not fixed yet, we'll be waiting till we blue black in the face. So personally, the real problem is self.
Yeah. So come on and join on with us. Hit us on our Facebook page at the New Black Leadership Coalition if you have an organization or you want to help us with the organizations that are part of our group. We need every kind of mind, professional, advocate, activist, etc. If you got money and you want to sit back and help us finance this ideal that you hear us talking about, we need help and we need resources, and resources are in the people. So we just can't sit back and and just sit on the sidelines. Sacrifice some of your club money, some of your trip money, some of your new car money, and do something to help the struggle. Don't sit on the sidelines like most of us do. It's only about 10% of us who engage in social change on our behalf. So why don't you at least be a part of that 10% and come on and help us, some people who are credible, who've spent thousands of our own dollars over the years to advance the idea of black unity and a black agenda to help the least of us as a people.
And so all of you folks out there on Facebook, on Twitter, on Snapchat, on all of those Instagram, make sure we use this social media, not just to post stuff, which is cool, but it is to organize the people of God, whether you call yourself a Muslim, a Christian, a Baptist, a Jehovah's Witness, a Hebrew Israelite, or whatever. It's only one God. And what we need to do, whether you black, white, or red, or yellow, we need to work together to make a difference in this world. Anyway, see you next week, God willing. Thank you, Brother Earl, one of the best producers on the planet.
That's right.
Here at IntellectualRadio.com. And listen, it's all kind of dynamic shows come through these airwaves. Peace and love.